Baruch haba, welcome everyone. We are on our 22nd Torah portion in the triennial cycle. It's exciting. I just love spending all this time in Genesis. I remember a year or two ago, actually it was before the pandemic, I remember when we were coming to the end of Genesis, and Annie Tan was saying how sad it is that we're finishing Genesis. So it's nice now that we're not finishing it so quickly. We're about halfway through, so that's wonderful. I just love to hang out in Genesis. And imagine when we're in Leviticus, how much time we'll be spending in Leviticus. We'll get to really, really drill deep and take it in. And those of you who are flirting with Hebrew can actually decide to maybe look up some words and start to dig a little bit. So it's really great. So I want to do something a little bit differently today. So what I want to do is we're still going to do our opening prayer and everything. But I don't know, those of you who know me, I don't know if you know that I used to live in Ukraine. I lived in Kiev. That's where I lived before coming here to the Philippines. And I have a heart for the Ukrainian people. And, they don't deserve this, what's happening to them with the invasion from the Russians. And the vicious moti shamra that's being put out by the dictator Putin. He's putting out these lies saying that he's there to denazify the Ukraine. Well, I don't know if you guys know or not, but the two most powerful leaders in Ukraine are both Jews, the president and the prime minister. In Ukraine, the president's more powerful than the prime minister. It's a bit different than other countries, but they're both Jews. And I'm really hoping that God will use this moment to draw them closer to Him, to draw them really near to depending on Him, and that it will become a big Kiddush Hashem. So, kind of in honor of the Ukrainians, what's happening, most Ukrainians, they know Russian. I'm going to say the opening prayer today in Russian, if you don't mind. Небесный Отец, да будет освящено имя Твое. Мы молимся за украинский народ. Пожалуйста, помогите им в сопротивлении этому злобному русскому вторжению. Пожалуйста, дайте украинским борцам за свободу мудрость и заставьте их врагов бежать со страхом. Ты защитник невинных, невиноватых и герой нашей жизни. Пожалуйста, Господь, используйте всех своих агентов здесь, на земле, включая западные державы, чтобы помешать этому великому злу, прежде чем оно станет неудержимым. Пожалуйста, используйте момент, когда еврейский президент Украины и еврейский премьер-министр обратятся к вам за помощью, как к сыновьям Израиля, и что это изменит их жизнь и жизни их собратьев. Мы воздаем вам славу Бога за заслуги Иешуа Хамашиах. Please pray for the Ukraine and for their resistance. It doesn't matter that Russia has more troops. It doesn't mean that they're necessarily going to win. We've seen some great acts of heroism already, and if God is on the Ukrainian side, it won't matter. Nothing else will matter. And what an amazing moment to have Jews at the forefront in government and acting correctly. I was very moved. Dan sent me a photo of the Ukrainian president. He's in military garb. He's going out to fight with the soldiers, right? He's doing what others sometimes only say they will do, but he's actually doing it, going out to fight. So I was very proud that he's a Jew. Please continuously pray for them all throughout the day. They haven't done anything to deserve this. It's free will which is causing this. I think sometimes people make a mistake, and anytime there's any kind of international event, like the volcano goes off, right? Or there's an earthquake, or an aggressor attacks. Oh, it must be judgment. It must be what they did. It might be. Who can say? Who can say? But we have a rabbinic principle for determining if something is truly a judgment from God on a country or on a city or in a region, and that's when it comes in threes. If you have a volcano erupt, and at the same time you have an army attacks you, and at the same time there's a plague, well, that's probably judgment from God. We do not knee-jerk to this interpretation anytime one single thing goes bad. It's kind of, I think among believers, sometimes we want to do that, right? We want to make sense of it all. Well, maybe God's just judging, right? Maybe he's using Russia to do such and such. Well, there's also free will. Things are rarely so simplistic. He has endowed us with free will. He has made us Elohim, that we are unpredictable. We can do as we wish. The only time when God interferes with free will is if that person is immovable in resisting his plans, his overall plans. So please don't be so quick just to say this is the will of God. Then we can just throw up our hands. We don't have to resist Iran getting a nuclear weapon. Or we don't have to resist any possible invasion of Taiwan, right? We don't have to resist any of the acts of evil that are out there. And by the way, we should also be careful not to impugn all Russians, right? There are massive demonstrations in Moscow and in St. Petersburg going on. When I checked yesterday, 1,700 people have been arrested, right? You're not allowed to protest, okay, in these types of regimes. And so it doesn't seem like the Russian people want this war. Maybe the old-timers do, they want the Soviet Union, but who can say? So let's not be too quick to judge the actual Russian people, as well as just the power that's behind this. And the same thing, if China invades Taiwan, we shouldn't judge the Chinese people, only the communist regime, right? We know communism's evil. Communism teaches there's no God, right? Communism persecutes believers. Communism is definitely an agent of the devil, right? So please, my friends, I hope none of you will ever vote for any communist persons or persons who ally themselves with communism. It is an invention from hell. Usually they try to sell it just on the economics of the thing, right? Well, that's socialism. That's another kind of evil. Communism, it's a full package. If you've ever read the Communist Manifesto, then you'll know that religion is considered drugs, it's narcotics, it's the opium of the masses. It's the delusion that people trick themselves so that they can make life bearable. This is the condescending attitude that all communist regimes have towards believers. All right, I'm going to read, let's see, we have an interesting comment here by Dr. Vera. He says, he's quoting from the ASV translation, 2 Chronicles, chapter 20, verse 12. And it says, O our God, wilt thou not judge them? For we have no might against this great company that cometh against us. Neither know we what to do, but our eyes are upon thee. Ye shall not need to fight in this battle. Set yourselves, stand ye still, and see the salvation of Hashem with you. O Judah and Jerusalem, fear not, nor be dismayed. Tomorrow go out against them, for Hashem is with you. That's 2 Chronicles 20, verses 12 through 17. Thank you for that, Doc. You always have a pithy and wise verse to share with us, and I appreciate it. I don't know if you guys know, also there's many Jews in Ukraine. It's a very, very large Jewish center. Even Odessa, this beautiful sea city in the south, it's called the Second Haifa. For years it's been called the Second Haifa. It's kind of a nickname. And they even have a dialect, Odessit, down there, which is full of Yiddish words. It's amazing. Even the Goyim, the non-Jews who live there, they know these various Yiddish words because of the Jewish influence that's been in Odessa for so long. Sure, that's a nice... someone writes me in private that maybe we can say a psalm also for the Ukraine. Yeah, let me see here. Let's choose an appropriate psalm. All right, so Hashem. Let's get into our Torah portion. Yes, Naomi, thank you. Mephibosheth, that's right. This is the one who sat at David's table and ate. So the Torah portion for today is Genesis chapter 24, verses 42 through 67. Chapter 24, incidentally, is the longest chapter in the book of Genesis. The Haftarah starts with Isaiah 12, verse 3, but if we have time to look at it, I want to show you one verse before that. Start with one verse. Here is the Masorah, demonstrating where our triennial cycle starts. For any of you who are visiting or who are new, you see we don't just make it up. This is actually in the Masorah. There's our big samech. Okay, my mouse is delayed. I think the internet. There's the big samech, telling us this is the Seder for the triennial cycle. And it's here. It's where the Torah portion starts. VaAvo Hayom el. Right, there it is. And I arrived that day unto Ha'ayin, the spring, Va'omar, and I said, "O Adonai Elohei, Adoni, Avraham, O Adonai, the God of my master, Avraham, if," and then he goes on, he finishes prayer. So here we make it look a little bit easier to read. Va'avo Hayom el Ha'ayin, Va'omar, Adonai Elohei Adonai Avraham, Yeshechana, matsliach takihi, asher anochi holech aleha. So then I said today, I arrived today. And there's an interesting comment here you can find in the Talmud Tractate Sanhedrin, in the Midrash Ein Yaakov, and also Rashi brings this out, that in order for the servant to make it in this amount of time, there had to be some sort of, this is me summarizing, teleportation or other miracle which occurred. The sages, they usually talk about the earth bending or the road shortening or something like this, but I think teleportation might kind of fit the bill. Maybe they just didn't have the word for that we have with all our sci-fi. Instead, the servant, he made it there in like a day. The text indicates that he went there in a day. And so, when I arrived today, El Ha'ayin, unto the spring, then I said, "O Adonai, God of my master Abraham, if now there is with you the idea is inferred here, to matsliach, to cause success of my path, my journey, on which I am walking upon it," meaning the road, right? So he's asking Hashem for something. In this Holech Aleha, the Rashbam comments that Eliezer's very detailed speech was designed to impress his listeners with how God had been the principal factor in everything which had transpired at the well, right? It's not just him. It's so clear to him that God has answered him. He's there for him. Verse 43. Hinei Anochi nitzav al ein hamayim, v'haya almah yotzet lishov, v'amarti eleha, hishkini na me'ad mayim mikadech. Behold, look, I've taken my place, I've taken a position near to the spring of water. When the maiden comes out, the one who is coming out, hayotzet, to draw water, and I say unto her, "Give me a drink, please, a little bit of water from your jug." Okay, so let's look here real quickly. Chizquni comments on this, v'haya almah. Earlier, Eliezer had referred to this as yet unknown to him as a girl, as hane'ua. He had thought previously that the inhabitants of Aram Naharaim only spoke and understood the local language, Aramaic. However, it turned out that they also understood Hebrew, as we know from when they said, "Teishiv hane'ua," let the girl remain for a while. Verse 44. ואמרה אלי גם אתה שתה וגם לגמליך אשב. And she will say unto me, also you. So why this phraseology, also you, gam ata? Rashi comments that gam ata, you drink also. that her use of the word gam also suggests that she intended to include the men who accompanied him. Right? Remember, he's not alone. You don't bring like 10 camels and all this stuff loaded up with gifts and precious gold and go through the desert alone. That would not be wise. What if there are bandits, right? Even if you could control all the animals yourself. So the Bible often does this. It just tells the story of the prominent players that are involved, and the others who are just there for the trip. We don't get a lot of details about them because goodness, it's already 66 books long. How big do we want it to be? Shitei, drink. V'gam ligmalecha, and also your camels. Eshav, I will draw, meaning I will draw water for them. He haisha, that one is the woman. Asher hochiach Adonai, whom Adonai has chosen, leven Adoni, for the son of my master. Sforno comments that she is the woman whom he has appointed. This recalls the statement in the Talmud Tractate Sotah, page 2, that already prior to birth, a heavenly voice proclaims which girl is destined to marry which young man. That's Sforno. So there's this idea, right, kind of the destiny, right, that there's a right person for everyone, right, that there's supposed to be. And so this can be kind of nice, right? Any of you who are going through heartbreak, right, as invariably happens to anyone who's lived long enough, you will go through heartbreak. If you haven't yet, don't worry, it's coming. Something to look forward to. You're going to get your heart broken. And when you do, you just remember this teaching, this Talmudic teaching, that whenever someone's born, their life partner is also prepared for them, that it's already declared by heaven, right, from heaven, that they will have the right, this is again among believers, right, that they will have the right person for them. And so even if it hurts now, if you think, oh my gosh, it's never going to heal, there's no light at the end of the tunnel, it can be so painful, right? You might be begging God to kill you, something like this. You need to understand, sometimes you might have been with the wrong person just so that eventually you'd be with the right one, right? To kind of keep you ready, right? Whereas the way that things work out, it wouldn't have worked out that you end up with the right one eventually anyway. Dr. Vera comments, Rivka must be a strong woman. She made 10 camels drink, and that's a lot of water. Yeah, no kidding. I've thought about that before too. She just really busted her tuchas off. She worked so hard. And also his men, right? Like Rashi commented that the Gam tells us also she's giving drink to his men, not just camels. Could you imagine the guys are super thirsty and she's just feeding the giving drink to the animals? She's helping them all. Yeah. It is interesting. And also, you have to wonder, did she have some attendants maybe? I mean, they were not a poor family. Is it possible that she could have had some attendants helping her? That's just not mentioned. I haven't heard any Midrash about this or seen it, but you have to wonder. It's a good comment, Doc. You have to wonder, did she have some help maybe, doing what she said? Rivka's an interesting character. She's kind of funny. Like, we probably won't have time to get there today, but I like in this Torah portion how I like how when she sees Yaakov from afar, she sees Yitzchak from afar, she falls off the camel. She falls off. Nafalal me'al kamal. And so I don't know what that was. Was it just that he was so good looking or something? She's like struck, oh my gosh, falls down, or was she just nervous or just shocked, or she lost her concentration, right? So she's quite a deep character, an interesting character, if you work out the little bits of information that we have about her from the stories, right? I mean, she's willing to, she knows in her gut that the servant is telling the truth about his prayer, right? Her family, they don't speak anything against this, but we don't know if it means they truly believed him, or it's just improper derech eretz to treat your host as if they're a liar or something, right? You can tell this by later in the story, they say, oh, well, wait, let's keep her here for 10 days or so more. Let's stay 10 days or more, and then she can go, right? They're really trying to delay it out a bit, maybe to seek out these things, find out if it's true. They could send some spy, to where Avraham is from and see what's the real deal about this. Well, her nurse does go with her. Dan says some Midrash say she was 10, so she would have a nurse with her. Yeah, I don't believe the 10-year-old thing. I'm glad you brought that up, though. She does have a nurse with her. The nurse does go with her, but this is, in the ancient Near Eastern cultures, the way it worked was you had a nurse, right? And then you grew up, and then your nurse was your servant, right? Kind of like later when Jacob gets his wives, right? You remember they each bring their nurses with them? And then later they give the nurses to Jacob also, right? They get promoted to be wives as well. But so it doesn't imply necessarily that they're 10 because they have nurses. But you're right, there is a midrash that says that. Yeah. Yeah. I'm personally against these midrashim. This came up, I think, in the intermediate class on Sunday, this concept about the midrash. I think Brother Tom mentioned it, about her being 10 years old. And, and the modern defense of that is, well, back then girls matured faster. I don't think it's the case. Yeah, I don't think she was 10. I think she definitely was, at least 14 or something like this, or older, right? She's some kind of teenager, right? But it is interesting to bring up. But yeah, no, we don't have this. And just so everyone is clear, in halakha today, whatever happened then, she today it is not kosher to marry 10-year-olds. Whatever the case might have been thousands of years ago, Judaism does not accept pedophilia, right? There's another religion that does this, right? There's plenty of room for them to do it. We don't do it. You want an Eshechayil is a mature adult woman who's ready to be a wife and can carry a conversation with her husband. Tet comments, there was a midrash that says that water from the well supernaturally lifted the jar of Rivka. That's nice. That gives a little bit of help, right? Even if she doesn't have servants. So she's only have to carry it. It's kind of funny. Like, you got to think about what's happening. Like, it's nice to imagine in your mind's eye what's really happening in the Bible, right? In these stories. So it's kind of interesting to think, what were the other servants of Eliezer doing, right? He's the chief servant, but the other guys he brought with him, what were these men doing? What was Eliezer doing, right? When they see this young lady, even if that's true, the midrash you mentioned, Tet, even if it's true that the well supernaturally lifted the jar, the bucket, the antlima, when she's carrying it, that's heavy, right? It's heavy to carry that back and forth, right? And so, imagine how awkward. These other men who are also servants, they're just standing there watching the girl do this. So this means that, when did they learn of, maybe they overheard Eliezer's prayer, right? Maybe they're all together and they hear him say his prayer, and so they know the sign to watch out for, so that's why they don't get involved? Either that or they're just jerks, right? They're not helping her. They're like, not chivalry was dead already. Yes, Tet, very good. That's the ruach. Tet says each camel would drink around 20 liters, if I remember. And also, she says, I remember the Samaritan woman too. Yes, very good. We're going to get to the Samaritan woman. Yeah, very good. Drawing water from the well, yup. That's yeah, Tom, actually 6 years old she was. Yeah. Tom mentions that Muhammad married an 8-year-old. She was 6 when he married her, according to authentic Hadith. Right? She was 6 years old, not 8. 6. And the Hadith go on to say that she still was playing with dolls when he consummated the marriage, and even afterwards. So the tradition is he consummated at age 9. So he married her at 6. Supposedly, there was no intercourse until 9. Right? So, yeah, gross. Yeah, terrible. Yeah, I'm resisting talking about other stuff that it says in that religion that actually did happen in the meantime. But so yeah, she was abused before the consummation. So we'll just leave it at that. All right. So there's an interesting comment here from Roni. He's got an interesting book on the Targums. I like this writer. He's an engineer who became a biblical scholar, right? So he started as an engineer, and then he realized his passion was in the Bible, and he decided to become a scholar, and now he is. And he writes that in 3 different Old Testament accounts, Genesis 24, Genesis 29, and Exodus 2, a man meets a woman at a well. And she goes on to become the bride of a man of God. We're interested in these passages because in John 4, Jesus Yeshua, I have a filter in my Bible program I set up that changes Jesus to Yeshua, and it makes Jesus super small, but when I copied it over, I forgot that you can still see Jesus. So Yeshua meets a Samaritan woman at a well, and this encounter involves a number of parallels to each of the Old Testament incidents, not only in the Bible itself, but also as these accounts are embellished in Jewish tradition. But before looking at these parallels, we want to see how the Old Testament incidents themselves point to the bridegroom-bride relationship between the Lord and Israel. Dr. Vera says Roning is just like me. Baruch Hashem, Ken Yiratzon, maybe God's will. I think it's kind of a natural move for engineers, actually, right, to move to biblical scholarship, because in engineering you have, like, alles in Ordnung, 1, 2, 3, and everything's in order, right? You kind of get used to having to be very logical and strict with things, and the details, right, are very important. And so I think it makes sense, right? It makes sense to step over into biblical scholarship, right? It's just another side of the coin, I think, right? If you can put the time into it, then yeah, really, may it be His. We're all growing, right? We're all studying. This is the end of part 1 from our Midrash. Study with us 9 times a week, twice on Shabbat, once on Sunday, once on Monday, once on Tuesday, twice on Wednesday, once on Thursday, and once on Friday. This is a Messianic Torah Renaissance. Kol kavod l'Adonai.